User stories are one of the most important artifacts of any agile team. The agile coaches and agile experts ask you or suggest you to document your requirements as part of user stories. Now, few are very particular about it, and they mention that it has to be user story in any agile team to document the requirement. And it has a unique format, as we know. It talks about who, what, and why. Who's as a person, as a user, what he or she wants to achieve, and why. So that's kind of format. But how important is that format? Is it important that we have to write everything on user stories? Why user stories? We are going to find out. Hello, my name is Devapam Sanyal and I am your personal coach. So coming back to the user stories, user stories are one of the most popular requirement documentation followed in agile teams, especially Scrum teams. And there are people who are very particular about it. That it's definitely is an amazing way to document your requirement. It helps you to be very precise. It helps you to detail your requirement. Now let's try to understand the intent of user story. Why user stories and the intent behind it. Now, as we know, if I tell you something in just words or in a very elaborated manner, uh, you will understand, but probably it could be difficult. However, if I tell you something in form of a story, then it becomes easier for you to understand. So the intent behind user story is to kind of draft the entire requirement in form of a story where I'm just telling you the narrator, the actor of that subject of the story, who is that person, and what is he trying to do, and why is he trying to do. So you are basically trying to answer who is doing what and why. So you have those three answers, which are very important for any person who is trying to do something in software. Right? If you are trying to develop something, you need to understand who, what, and why. So these three things are addressed in user stories, and that's why people are very particular about it. That you have to write a user story. Now, the thing is, when you are writing a user story, what you are doing with those three lines, can you explain everything? What needs to be done? Precisely no, right? I mean, we can't explain everything that needs to be developed or coded through these three lines. There are so many other things that are required. There are so many assumptions, technical details, and maybe mock-up screens, and so on and so forth are required. So, when these are required, what is the intent behind it? Now, remember when user stories come from that conversation of 3C, the strategic way of writing a story. Right? 3C: card, conversation, confirmation. That means you write a card and then you start conversation around the card so that you reach to a confirmation stage. Now that is the whole intent of user story. It was created as a promise to discuss. Now, previously, when requirements were written, people were not part of the developers, the team, right? They were never part of that discussion. Now, user stories were meant to introduce so that these people were part of that discussion. What is going on now? The product owner, if you are in a Scrum team, you have three roles: product owner, Scrum master, and a Scrum team. So the product owner is someone who owns the vision, right? So the product owner, who when he or she presents the requirement, the development team, the Scrum team, will have question about it, right? And that question becomes this leads to discussion around the story, right? So that is the conversation that we are talking about. The card is the user story, the three lines, that is it, right? The discussions leads to more details. more details are required for that story to be developed into software, working software. Right? That is what we are measuring in a team, in Agile, a working software. And that can be only done through the conversation. So the conversation part, once that is done, and when we all have that conversation going around, we reach to a confirmation stage. Now, how important is that format, right? So when what we are trying to understand here is that the user stories format to me is a good thing to have, but it's not must thing to have. What is must here is that card conversation and confirmation. So you need to have a promise to have conversation around the requirement. That is more important. Including people into the conversation, including people, the development team, the scrum team, any team that you are working with, when you are designing or when you are drafting a requirement, they should be part of that conversation. There should be discussion around it. There should be different questions, answer. So the person from the product side brings functional viability. The person from the technical side brings technical viability to the entire discussion. And that what makes it a complete wholesome discussion. Right? And that is important. That is the soul of user story. Now, if somebody decides that I am going to have a requirement, maybe not drafted as who, what, and why, but I'm going to have a discussion with the team. I'm going to have all those in a conversation and then reaching into conversation. I'm fine with it. But if there is a team which says, "Hey, we are going to write in format of who, what, and why," but we are not including people to discuss, it does not make any sense, right? So the important part of any user story writing is to make that promise to conversation, and that leads to confirmation. And that is why requirement writing has been changed ever since the user stories have come into the picture. Now that's not everything, right? Just try to understand that the intent of user story, which is the conversation. If you have conversation around it, we are doing good. If you don't really have the conversation around it and you're just writing as who, what, why, it is not going to give you any benefit. That's useless, right? So even if you are not writing in that format but you are having a conversation, it's fine, right? There is no crime in it. There is no crime or there is nothing bad about not writing anything in the format of user story. There are other formats as well which are totally acceptable, right? There are different other formats which are totally acceptable, but you need to have a conversation in any of the formats that you write. If you are, and when I say format, it doesn't mean that you are writing everything elaborately in a whole, like documents that we used to make. For example, a software detailed document or a functional detailed document, FDD or SDD or SRD, FRD, BRD, kind of thing, right? So those documents are generally, a fruitless. Reason being, you are writing everything there. In Agile, you are kind of breaking your requirements into smaller parts. So it's important that you draft your requirement into smaller parts. So I'm just talking about the who, what, why format, right? So when you write it in different other formats, and now many people say, hey, can I write acceptance criteria and Gherkin formats, right? Given, when, then, and all that. Any format is fine, right? Any format is fine until you are true to the purpose in this sense, right? True to the purpose of conversation and discussion. So keep in mind that user stories are meant for that conversation to happen, not meant for to write it in who, what, and why format. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. Put your comments below down in the comment section. If you like the content, please subscribe and like, and I will see you soon. Thank you.